They say secrets have a scent. Maybe not to everyone, but to those who live close enough, love long enough, or lie often enough, yes, they do. And mine? Mine smelled like his cologne. I remember the first time I cheated on Mark like it happened this morning. Not because I'm proud of it, God, no, but because of how heartbreakingly human I felt in that moment. Terrified. Liberated. Hungry and full at the same time. It wasn't about love. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. It was about escaping something, even if I didn't yet know what that something was. It started in the usual way things like this start: slow burn, a little flicker, then before you know it, you're lighting matches in a house made of gasoline and lies. His name was Nathan, a personal trainer at the gym I started going to after turning 42. The kind of man who called everyone champ and said things like, "Let's get after it," when you were already sweating through your sports bra. I wasn't even supposed to be at the gym that day. I'd told Mark I had a dentist appointment. That was my first lie. It's funny. The first lie is always the hardest. It feels like swallowing glass. But by the fifth or sixth, you're chewing it like gum. I was doing squats, well, pretending to do squats, when Nathan walked by, offered a correction on my form, touched my lower back. Just briefly. But that was enough. I felt the jolt of it, right between my shoulder blades and deep down somewhere warmer. When he smiled, I smiled back, and that was it. Harmless flirtation. Or so I thought. That night, I came home to Mark reheating leftover lasagna, wearing those plaid pajama pants I'd gotten him for Christmas. We kissed. He asked me how the dentist went. I said, fine. He didn't question it. He never did. That's the thing about Mark. He trusts me. Or he did. The affair with Nathan didn't begin with a bang. It started over protein shakes and post-workout conversations. I was always careful. Never texted anything too bold. Always deleted our chat history. We met at his place once, just to talk, and then again the next week. And then it stopped being just talk. We laughed about stupid things. We talked about music. He told me he liked that I wasn't one of those dramatic girls. I liked that he looked at me like I was still 30. And I justified it all. Mark was too busy with work. Too tired at night. Too caught up in his spreadsheets and investment portfolios. I was just finding what I missed. Of course, I didn't know that Mark was also finding something he missed. There was this one evening, early autumn, golden hour light slanting through the kitchen blinds. I was sipping a glass of wine, scrolling through Pinterest for Halloween party ideas, when I noticed his phone buzzing on the counter. He was in the shower. The screen lit up with a name, Claire. And underneath it, "Can't wait to see you again." I didn't mean to read it. Okay, that's a lie. I picked up his phone, entered his passcode, yes, I knew it, and opened the thread. There they were, dozens of messages. Flirty, teasing, familiar. Claire was real. Claire knew my husband's favorite wine, the name of his childhood dog, the brand of his aftershave. My heart didn't drop. It raged. So, this was the game we were playing. He was cheating, too. And all this time, we'd been eating dinner side by side like the world's most patient poker players, bluffing each other while holding matching aces. But here's the part that still haunts me: I didn't confront him. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw his phone across the kitchen floor. Instead, I put it back down, finished my wine, and texted Nathan. Hey, you busy tonight? Because suddenly, it wasn't about escaping. It was about revenge. There's a moment in every secret life when the lines start to blur. You forget what you told who, what you covered up, and what you simply refused to see. I thought I was in control. That was cute. Nathan and I met that night. Again. I told Mark I was meeting my friend Cindy for margaritas and venting time, which was an easy lie. Cindy and I used to be close, book club close, but she moved to Denver after her divorce, and we mostly just liked each other's posts now. Still, she made a great alibi. When I showed up at Nathan's door, he greeted me with that lopsided grin that said no questions, just come in. I let myself be wanted, touched, devoured. And yet, there was a hollowness to it that hadn't been there before. Maybe it was Claire. I couldn't stop picturing her. Blonde, maybe? Probably did yoga. The kind of woman who laughed at Mark's dad jokes and never forgot to say, please, to the waiter. She'd probably never cheat. I wasn't jealous. No, not of her. But I was furious that Mark had beat me to it. Over the next few weeks, I started watching him more closely. I became a little spy in yoga pants and cardigans, cataloging his movements. He started showering in the evenings, buying new socks, getting haircuts without my nagging him about it. Classic signs. I'd read the articles. I downloaded an app that let me clone his phone. Don't ask me how. My nephew set it up and didn't ask questions. Every message Claire sent him came straight to me now. And let me tell you, sweetheart, those two were in deep. She called him babe. They had a special hotel. A little getaway spot on the edge of town called the Briar Inn. Lord, the irony, it was the same place Mark and I spent our anniversary night 3 years ago. And to make matters worse, he even made reservations under his real name. Lazy. So I did what any scorned woman with a good shade of lipstick and a bottle of Cabernet would do. I made a reservation there too. But life's never that straightforward, is it? Right around this time, Nathan started acting different. He was distracted, checking his phone a lot. One night, right after we'd finished watching No Country for Old Men at his place, romantic, right? I caught a glimpse of his lock screen. It was a picture of him, with a kid. A little boy, maybe 4, with the same crooked smile. I'd never asked if he had a family, and apparently, he never thought to mention it. So now I was the other woman to a man who had another woman, while being cheated on by a man I married 15 years ago. They should really hand out merit badges for this kind of emotional multitasking. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched Mark breathe beside me and wondered how long he'd been pretending, too. I thought about Claire, about Nathan, about that little boy with his tiny sneakers and juice-stained t-shirt. I started asking myself the kind of questions I didn't want the answers to. Who was I becoming? That Saturday, I decided to follow Mark. He said he had a work brunch with some new clients. I just nodded and smiled like the good wife I'd stopped being. I waited until he left, then drove to the Briar Inn with a scarf over my head like some ridiculous film noir character. I parked near the back, heart thudding like a jackhammer. And there it was. Mark's car. Right next to a shiny little Lexus with a pink fuzzy steering wheel cover. I waited. I watched. At 12:07, Mark came out first, fixing his shirt buttons. Claire followed. She was nothing like I'd imagined. Curvy, brunette, probably mid-30s. She looked normal. Harmless. She kissed him on the cheek, laughed at something he said, then got into her car and drove off. Mark stood there for a minute, checking his phone. And that's when I texted him. Forgot to mention, I was thinking about booking us a night at the Briar Inn. But looks like you beat me to it. I watched him freeze. He spun around like someone just yelled boo behind him. Then he looked straight at my car. I rolled down the window and gave a little wave. Later that night, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. No yelling. No accusations. Just quiet, heavy honesty. He spoke first. I guess we both have things to confess, he said, his voice dry like old toast. I nodded. Guess we do. Neither of us asked why. Maybe we already knew the answer. Maybe we were afraid of what it would be. I loved her, he said after a pause. Not in the way I loved you. But she made me feel alive again. I nodded again. My heart didn't crack, it just bent a little. I didn't love Nathan, I said. But I wanted someone to look at me like I wasn't just your wife. Or the grocery list planner. Or the woman who folds your socks in half. He let out a tired laugh. I stopped looking. I'm sorry for that. I stood up, poured us both a glass of wine, and handed him one. So, I said, what now? He looked at me with those familiar brown eyes. Do we stop lying or just start lying better? And that, my friend, is where the real story begins. You know your marriage is in trouble when you create a color-coded spreadsheet to track each other's affairs. I didn't plan to become a detective, but when the heart breaks, the brain gets busy. The morning after our little kitchen table confessional, Mark and I decided to brace yourself, talk like real adults. I know, revolutionary. I told him I needed to understand the timeline. He agreed. We both had mugs of coffee, pens, and a legal pad. It looked like we were about to plan a PDA fundraiser, not unpack our mutual betrayals. Okay, I said, clicking my pen like some V-list cop from a buddy movie. Claire, when did it start? He rubbed his face like he was being audited. Last January, he mumbled. January of last year. He blinked. We were going through a rough patch. We were doing dry January and meal prepping like a Hallmark couple. He just shrugged. To keep myself from throwing my mug at his head, I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet titled Lies and Alibis, Joint Infidelity Audit. I made columns. Date. Cheater. Mistress/Mr. Cover story. Risk level, 1 to 10. Notable lies. Mark actually leaned in and asked if he could add conditional formatting. I swear we were bonding over betrayal and Excel. 20 years of marriage, and we finally found a shared hobby, revenge analytics. I went full sleuth after that. Downloaded an app that cross-checked calendar events, location data, and Uber receipts. The results were horrifying and honestly impressive. Mark once told me he had a business dinner with a client named Alan, but turns out Alan was a sushi chef at a rooftop restaurant where he and Claire once got drunk on sake and left their credit card behind. I know this because I called the restaurant pretending to be Claire's assistant. Yes, Miss Claire left her card again, the hostess sighed. Tell her we're not keeping it next time. I put a sticky note on my spreadsheet. March 23rd, Alan is actually a Japanese man with a rice paddle. Then I decided if Mark was going to lie like a 14-year-old, I was going to investigate like Miss Marple on espresso. I ordered a nanny cam disguised as a fake succulent and planted it in our living room. Why? Because Claire had never been to our house, allegedly, but I wanted proof. And sure enough, one afternoon when I was at yoga, guess who walked in the front door with a bottle of wine? Claire. Wearing my robe, drinking my wine, petting my cat, who I thought had standards. When I showed the footage to Mark, he looked horrified. Not because he got caught, but because he realized the robe was from my mom. I thought it looked familiar, he whispered. That's because it smells like eucalyptus and maternal disappointment. We said we'd start over. New rules. Radical honesty. But you know what happens when two people with a long history of lying decide to be completely honest? They start confessing stuff you never even asked about. Mark and I decided to hit reset. We even shook on it. Like we were closing a business deal. No more secrets, he said, eyes steady. No more dentist appointments, I added, with one eyebrow raised. No more Claire. No more Nathan. Pause. Or Baxter Kelly, I clarified, just in case. For the first week, things actually felt good. I won't lie, there was a strange piece to it all. We watched a true crime docuseries together and didn't even once accuse the other of being the killer. That's progress, right? We even tried Truth Hour every Friday night. Don't ever do this. Ever. The first one went like this. Me. Okay, my turn. Did you ever really like my meatloaf? Mark, long pause, not really. It tastes like seasoned regret. Me, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Your turn. Mark, did you ever read my novel draft? Me, sipping wine. Define read. By the second week, Truth Hour had turned into a passive-aggressive roast. I told him I hated his world's best husband mug. He told me my impression of his mother was cruel and possibly actionable. We still laughed. Mostly. Until we didn't. That's when I found the list. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I was looking for batteries in the kitchen junk drawer when I found a crumpled yellow notepad page with things to confess, eventually, written at the top. And sweet baby Jesus, it was thorough. Here are just a few entries. Lied about reading Eat, pray, love in 2010 to impress Lauren, me. Rewatched The Sopranos without her. Twice. Pretended to donate to her sister's fundraiser, but actually just clicked like. Claire got a tattoo of my initials. Once used her toothbrush to clean shoe scuffs. Told her I hated couples therapy because of work. Actually just didn't want to miss March Madness. Reader, I screamed into a hand towel. I took the list and added a few entries of my own, just for balance. Told Mark I lost my wedding ring gardening. It's at the bottom of a frozen yogurt machine in Reno. Faked a work retreat once. Spent 2 nights in a spa with my friend Camille watching Outlander and drinking vodka through Twizzlers. Once threw out his fantasy football trophy by accident. It was not an accident. By week 3 of radical honesty, we were both on edge. Every conversation had the tone of a soap opera recap. Are you sure you're just going to the post office? Yes and no. Claire doesn't work there. I checked. We tried to spice things up with a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods, cute, rustic, total Wi-Fi dead zone. The idea was to reconnect. All we reconnected with was our deep, profound inability to start a fire or play Scrabble without a fight. But one thing did happen that weekend. I laughed. Real laughter. Like ugly snort laughter. Mark was trying to impress me by chopping wood like he was on some frontier reality show, and the axe bounced off a knot and hit his shin. He let out a high-pitched yelp and fell backward into a snowbank, arms flailing like an inflatable car lot guy. I couldn't breathe from laughing so hard. He sat up, covered in snow, glaring at me. You think this is funny? I nodded, tears in my eyes. You look like a Yeti who lost his insurance. Then he laughed, too. And for a moment, we weren't cheaters or liars or broken people trying to pretend we weren't. We were just 2 idiots who used to be in love, slowly figuring out if we still could be. On the drive home, we passed the Briar Inn. He glanced at it and said, "Should we burn it down? For closure." I smiled. "Only if we stop at Home Depot first. I need lighter fluid and self-respect." When we got home, I threw away the Truth Hour timer and the list. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because the truth isn't something you schedule. It's something you live. Or at least, try to. Mark hugged me that night in the kitchen. Long, quiet. And said, "I still don't like your meatloaf, but I'd eat it every night if it meant sitting next to you." And honestly, that felt more honest than any list or spreadsheet or sugar-coated lie we ever told. Forgiveness is weird. It doesn't arrive like a package at your doorstep. It sneaks in like a smell from the neighbor's kitchen, familiar, a little unwanted, but eventually, you just kind of get used to it. Mark and I didn't wake up one day and say, "Let's forgive each other." We just ran out of steam. Ran out of accusations, late-night interrogations. "Oh yeah? Then why did you say this on March 17th, 2019? Moments. Eventually, it was either learn to live with the past or be eaten alive by it. We started small. He stopped using Claire and the incident in the same sentence. I stopped referring to Nathan as my personal trainer turned emotional void in sneakers. We gave up on Truth Hour and replaced it with Silence and Snacks Night, where we watched mindless TV and shared a blanket like 2 people who weren't entirely sure they liked each other, but weren't willing to admit how lonely they'd be without the other. Then one Sunday morning, I caught him doing something that cracked me wide open. He was folding my laundry. Not just throwing it into a basket or dumping it on my side of the bed. He was folding. Like matching socks and everything. He even rolled my leggings like Marie Kondo. The man was making little laundry sushi. I just stood there in the hallway, watching him. He looked up. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just, who are you?" He grinned. "A man who's very sorry and has a sudden need to keep you from running away again." And damn it if I didn't tear up right there between the hamper and the vacuum closet. But forgiveness isn't all domestic chores and heartfelt moments. Sometimes it's messy. Like the time we went to a barbecue at our neighbor Diane's place, and Mark had the nerve to ask if I brought the potato salad Claire used to make. I froze. Fork midair. "I'm sorry, whose potato salad?" His eyes widened. No, 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 I meant your recipe. The one you made that Claire mentioned liking one time. He spent the rest of the evening scraping plates and apologizing to my deviled eggs. Then there was the night we ran into Nathan. Of course it happened in the frozen foods aisle. I was reaching for a bag of butternut squash ravioli and boom, there he was, looking like regret in gym shorts. He blinked. Lauren. Nathan, I said, cool as cucumber slices. Mark came up behind me with a bag of frozen peas. Friend of yours? Nathan awkwardly extended his hand. Hey man, you must be the husband. Mark looked him over and said, you must be Baxter Kelly's dad. Reader, I nearly dropped the ravioli. Nathan vanished 2 aisles over. I burst out laughing. Mark did too. I'm sorry, he said between giggles. I couldn't help it. Don't be, I said. That was spectacular. We weren't healed. Not completely. There were still days when something would trigger a memory. A smell. A song. A highway exit. I'd flinch and wonder if I was foolish for staying. If love was supposed to be this, cracked. But then we'd be in the kitchen, arguing over how to load the dishwasher, and he'd say something so ridiculous like no one puts spoons face down, it's psychotic, and I'd laugh so hard I'd forget why I was mad in the first place. Because underneath the hurt, there was still us. Banged up, bruised, but not broken beyond repair. One night, we sat on the porch swing, sipping wine, wrapped in a shared fleece blanket like a suburban cliché. I still don't know if I've fully forgiven you, I said, quietly. Mark nodded. Same. But I think I'm starting to forgive myself, too. That hit me, because I hadn't realized how much I'd hated myself for what I did. For what we did. For how easily love can drift when no one's steering. I'm glad you're still here, I said, resting my head on his shoulder. I'm glad you didn't run off with that guy from the gym, he whispered. Even if your abs were better back then. I elbowed him. Rude. He laughed. True, though. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. But it came in bits. In laundry. In sarcasm. In half-burnt dinners and porch swings. In not leaving. In staying even when it was easier to go. And maybe that's all it really is, choosing to stay. You can patch up a leaky roof, but when the storm comes back around, you'll find out real quick where the holes still are. Marriage is like that. You think you're in the clear, then bam, thunder in aisle 6. Things had been better. Not perfect, but we'd found our groove again. Like old dancers who'd forgotten the steps, but still remembered the music. Mark brought me flowers from the farmer's market. Tiny sunflowers in a jam jar, just how I like them. I stopped pretending I didn't miss him in the mornings. We started reading in bed again, shoulder to shoulder, legs tangled up like teenagers. It was sweet. Quiet. Familiar. Then came the letter. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just made a tuna noodle casserole, Mark's weird comfort food, and the mail was sitting on the counter, unopened. One envelope stood out. No return address, just our names handwritten in careful block letters. He opened it while I rinsed the dishes. He said. I turned. What? He handed me the letter, his face already doing that guilty twitch. It read, Dear Mark and Lauren, you don't know me, but I know both of you. I've been watching from the sidelines for a while, and it's clear something's rotten behind that white picket facade. Thought you should know. Claire's not who you think she is. And Nathan? You might want to ask him about his wellness weekends in Arizona. Check your phone bills. Follow the trail. Trust me, there's more to uncover. A friend. I stared at the paper like it was dipped in poison. What the hell? I whispered. Mark looked pale. You don't think Claire sent it? Why would Claire rat on herself? Because she's dramatic. You saw the tattoo. I paced around the kitchen, heart pounding. Nathan hasn't even texted me in weeks. Said he was in a period of realignment. What does that even mean? Yoga cult. Mark offered, deadpan. I shot him a look. Not helping. So, naturally, we did what any mature, level-headed couple would do. We went full spy mode. Again. We pulled up our phone bills, cross-reference calls. And wouldn't you know it, Nathan had been texting a number labeled Dale, Jim, every Friday night at 9 p.m. for the last 6 months. That seemed suspicious. I called it. "Hello," said a woman's voice. "Hi, is Dale there?" "Dale? You mean my husband." Click. Meanwhile, Mark checked his old emails and found a travel itinerary Claire had once forwarded him. Supposedly a conference in Tucson. But the hotel reservation was in someone else's name. A man's name. I said it then, and I'll say it now. You know things are messy when the cheaters are being cheated on. "Do we call them?" Mark asked. "No," I said. "We thank them." He blinked. For cheating on us? For proving that we made the right choice walking away. For making our train wreck of a love story look like the more stable option. He raised an eyebrow. "You're really calm about this." "Oh, I'm mad," I said. "But it's the kind of mad that comes with clarity. Like when your pants split at a wedding, you're embarrassed, sure, but also a little relieved. Because at least now you know they didn't fit to begin with." And that was when we finally, closed the chapter on Claire and Nathan. Deleted their numbers. Blocked them on everything. He even threw away the fuzzy handcuffs Claire gave him for Valentine's Day. Yes, really. It felt like taking the last bag of trash out after a long, stinky week. That weekend, we hosted our first dinner party since everything. Just a small one. My sister Jen and her fiancé. Our nosy neighbor Diane. A coworker of Mark's who looked confused when I said, "Hi, I'm the wife." The original wife. We laughed. We drank too much wine. We made inappropriate jokes about couples therapy. When Diane asked how we'd made it through such a rough patch, Mark looked at me and said, "We stopped trying to win and started trying to stay." And I swear I felt something shift in my chest. Maybe it wasn't love. Not the swoony, breathless kind we had at the beginning. But it was something sturdy. Real. The kind of thing you build a second life on. And that night, lying in bed, I whispered, "I'm glad it's just us again." Mark kissed my forehead. "Me too. Just us." Pause. "Even if I still think you load the dishwasher like a psychopath." Mark. "Yeah? I hope you step on a Lego. Every couple has that drawer. You know, the one, half batteries, half forgotten souvenirs, a charger for a phone you haven't owned since Obama was president. That's what a marriage is really. A big OL junk drawer. The question is, what do you toss, and what's still worth keeping?" After the dinner party, we had this weird pocket of peace. Like we'd finally paid off a debt we didn't know we owed. I wasn't checking Mark's phone anymore. He stopped asking, "Who is that?" every time my phone buzzed. We were living in that delicate, rare space called normal. And yet, something felt unfinished. It started one morning when I opened the hall closet and saw it, the box. The relationship box. Every couple has one. This one had movie stubs, anniversary cards, a pine cone we picked up on a hike in Vermont, don't ask, a matchbox from the Briar Inn, oh yes, that Briar Inn, and even a copy of the first poem Mark wrote for me back when he was still pretending to like poetry and I was pretending not to be high maintenance. I sat on the hallway floor in my robe and slippers, that box in my lap, like I was holding the last 10 years in origami form. Mark walked by, saw me, and stopped. "Oh!" "That box." "Yep." He sat down beside me, crisscross applesauce, and picked up the matchbox. "Remember the first time we went there?" "I liked it better before it became an infidelity hub," I said. He nodded. "Same." We went through the box slowly, one memory at a time. Some made us laugh. Some made us roll our eyes. One, an ultrasound printout from the pregnancy we lost, made us both go completely quiet. I hadn't seen that in years. "You kept this?" I asked softly. I didn't have the heart to let it go. We didn't speak for a few minutes. Just sat there, side by side, holding onto something no one else in the world would ever fully understand. That's what I mean when I say what we keep. Not always the good. Just the true. But letting go? Oh, baby, that's where things get tricky. Letting go meant giving up the fantasy that we'd ever be the couple we once were. That there was a version of us untouched by betrayal and sarcasm and old receipts from Claire's coffee orders. Letting go meant really burying those parts of ourselves. So we made a plan. A purge day. I printed out an old photo of us, pre-cheating, pre-Nathan, pre-midlife unraveling, and taped it to a shoebox labeled, "What we're leaving behind." We each got one afternoon. No questions asked. Anything could go in the box. Anything we needed to let go of. The next day, we sat together and opened it. Here's what was inside. Claire's note. One of my gym wristbands. Mark's old cologne, the scent that used to make me ache. A copy of that ridiculous spreadsheet. R.I.P. lies and alibis. And a little pink onesie I'd bought on impulse years ago, just in case. That one hurt the most. But it felt right. Mark looked at me, his eyes full but steady. Ready? I nodded. Ready. We burned it in our backyard fire pit. No big speeches. No symbolic dances or cleansing rituals. Just fire and silence, and the occasional gust of wind trying to sabotage the mood. Afterward, we made grilled cheese and watched Jeopardy. Like nothing had happened. But something had happened. We'd made space. Later that week, Mark said, "You think we'll ever really feel like we made it through?" I said, "I think we'll just feel it less. Like a healed scar. Still there, but not aching every time you move." He nodded. "I can live with that." Then he paused and added, "You kept the pine cone." I smiled. Some things are too weird to throw out. And just like that, we kept moving. Not backward. Not forward with fireworks. But steadily, like two people walking side by side again. Scarred. Honest. Older. Wiser. Together. Still, somehow. Turns out, you don't need a church or a fancy venue to renew your vows. Sometimes, all you need is a backyard, a folding chair, and someone who still chooses you, even after everything. It was Mark's idea. Which honestly surprised me. He's not exactly the ceremony type. The man once tried to make our anniversary dinner with frozen fish sticks and boxed wine. Bless his heart. But there we were, one Saturday morning in April, him standing at the kitchen counter with coffee in hand, and this sheepish look on his face. "I was thinking," he said, "what if we rewrote our vows?" I blinked. Like, for real? With guests and cake and the whole 9 yards. He shrugged. "Doesn't have to be big. Just ours. Something that says we survived all this nonsense and we're still in it." And Lord help me, I said yes. We kept it small. My sister Jen. His best friend Dave. Our neighbor Diane, who brought a six-pack and cried before the ceremony even started. We set up a little arch in the backyard, wrapped it in fairy lights and fake ivy from Hobby Lobby. I wore a blue sundress. Mark wore khakis and a wrinkled linen shirt like a man determined to look semi-retired. And right there, under a sky so wide it made me feel tiny and infinite all at once, we stood facing each other again. No officiant. No aisle. Just us. He went first. "I vow to stop pretending your meatloaf is bad," he said, grinning. "It's actually delicious. Even the weird ketchup topping." The crowd laughed. "I vow to never call your mother before 10 a.m. again. And to always check if you're watching a show before I skip ahead on Netflix." I was already misty-eyed when he finished with, "I vow to never be perfect, but to always be honest. And to keep choosing you every day, even on the days when choosing me is hard." Well, I was gone. I took a shaky breath and read mine, scrawled on the back of a grocery list, because that's who I am. I vow to never weaponize remember when, even when it's tempting. I vow to always laugh at your bad jokes, even when they're really bad. Mark mouthed thank you. I vow to let go of things when they stop serving us old grudges, expired milk, and yes, spreadsheets. Laughter again. Warm. Kind. And most of all, I vow to remember why we started. Before the chaos. Before the secrets. When it was just two people who liked reading in bed and arguing about the right way to load a dishwasher. He reached out and took my hand. My wedding ring was still missing, frozen yogurt machine, remember, but it didn't matter. I had his fingers in mine, and they felt like home. We kissed. Diane cheered. Jen brought out a store-bought cake with round 2, "Let's try again," written in blue icing. And just like that, we were married again. Not because the first time didn't count, but because this time we knew what it meant. Later that night, after everyone left, we danced in the backyard. No music, just the rhythm of old feet on damp grass and the crickets singing backup. Mark whispered, "Would you say you trust me again?" I rested my head on his chest. Not completely, but more than I did yesterday. He kissed my hair. I'll take that. And that's how it ends, or maybe how it begins again. With 2 people who screwed up and stayed. With burned bridges and rebuilt kitchens. With soft forgiveness and even softer vows.